Good morning, everyone. Let's get going on the investor relations topic. You see it's an old picture, and you see the topic is the challenges ahead. I don't like to talk so much about the challenges, but I'd like to talk about the opportunities, because there are plenty of opportunities in this topic, and you will have understood that by the time you go out here today, you will think about investor relations, investor relations, investor relations, investor relations, investor relations, and once more investor relations, because it is a huge opportunity for our industry, and it has been building up without us noticing actually too much over the last few years. Remember, before we look forward, allow me to look back a little bit, some 20 or so odd years, maybe a little bit more. And for those of you who were around 1991, that was the first attempt to create a private equity cluster in Luxembourg, institutional funds, long forgotten, but replaced very successfully over time. But 2004 marked really the first real attempt by the policymakers in Luxembourg to create a private equity cluster of competencies. And it was a big moment, because that was regulated private equity. Everybody was saying, private equity and regulation, private equity and prudential oversight don't go well together. It's never going to work. And then came 2007. 2007, 2008, and then the entire industry was sucked up into regulation, which translated into the AIFM directive, so the regulation of all alternative investment fund managers in Europe. And by now we can say it's a global phenomenon, because the Americans are also going there. So that then basically set the next development stage. And Luxembourg was actually at that moment, said, okay, look, this is kind of interesting, because we know this is something we feel comfortable. We had a head start. And oh yes, we had. Because when you look at, not even 10 years later, at the industry and the investment management industry in this country, private equity center stage, alternative investments are center stage. And we have more than 300 IFMs that are authorized. We have over 600 IFMs that are registered, over 6,000 people employed in the sector. We have the custodians, we have the central administrators, we have the TAs, and we have the product. Now think about it. The entire world is using the Luxembourg fund product, so the Luxembourg brand, made in Lux. Just like what started over 30 years ago on the liquid public fund side with the UCITS brand, which transformed into a Luxembourg brand globally, the AIF brand is also, let's say, emerging, and it's emerging yet again as a Luxembourg brand. And so now think about it, when you have a great product, and when you have the entire value chain here, wouldn't it make sense that you really know here how to sell it, how to distribute it, how to market it, and that, yes, we need risk management, yes, we need portfolio management, because these are core functions of AIFMs here based in Lux and established, but we also very importantly need the placement function, because without placement, there is no money coming in. Without money coming in, the entire system doesn't work. So that is, and that is one of the starting points. So we said that, look, how come that we speak so little about this? And why have we been talking a lot more about it, certainly over the last couple of years? Well, one very important trigger was Brexit. So 2016, a number of managers clearly identified what was going to happen in 2020, although it took a little bit longer than initially anticipated. But quite a few had some foresight and said, ooh, something is going to happen. The UK is going to be a third country. And remember, when we look at today at the European landscape from a fundraising point of view, London is where most of the IR functions are very deeply anchored and rooted, and still continue to be there. Because, well, Europe is not everything, and Europe includes the UK, but the EU does no longer include the UK, but the UK operations, they distribute to the rest of the world as well. So that's why we have not seen these functions move anywhere else, because they still have a very important role and function to play where they are. But the industry is looking for solutions on the European continent. And the European continent, so the EU, is one of the most important distribution territories in the world. So there are not so many managers that are not interested in distributing across the EU. But we know that since 2020, for a UK-based IR teams, this has been quite a bumpy ride, and we know that there are plenty of legal uncertainties out there. Legal uncertainty is bad for business. So and now, you know, after the pandemic kind of did not really allow us to see it all, because it was zooming and everything else. But now, as we move out of there and we move into the next crisis, well, it's flaring up. So there is a lot more focus on the investor relations function altogether, because many managers are, you know, realizing we're going through difficult times. There is a real crisis out there, and we haven't seen much of it yet, probably. And so that is also a good moment to pause and think what is coming ahead. And we are doing within the association, within the ExCom, we're doing exactly the same. So the reflections of our membership are reflecting on us in the ExCom. And so we discussed early during the year that we really needed a significant push on the investor relations side, because the industry is struggling. There is legal uncertainty. We're entering into uncharted territories, and the solutions are there. They're here in the country. So Luxembourg can, yet again, for this industry, offer the solutions, not the challenges. The challenges are there for everyone, but the solutions, that's what the industry is interested in. So we decided, okay, let's put this forward. Also, this conference today is about putting this topic forward and clearly in your mind. And we said, okay, there are investor relations and fundraising is already happening today. You will very soon be seeing here a real testimony of real fundraising in and from Luxembourg. And so don't get me wrong, we are equipped and we have everything it takes to be on the forefront on the fundraising side. But we can do it better. And as an association, we want to help the industry to speed up the transition, to find the solutions that the market is struggling with faster, because Brexit is not going away. And next to Brexit, which is not the only driver, there's also increased sophistication in the fundraising space. I mean, Stefan mentioned it, Klaus mentioned it there. Fundraising is not as harmonized as one might think. Fundraising is a multifaceted process where there's a regulatory part, there's a legal part, there's a commercial part, and all of this going together in the cross-border context can create real hurdles to doing business. But we said that we have it all, but in the pure Luxembourg tradition, let's look at what can be done better. And let's first of all make sure that everybody has on his or her mind that this is a topic that we want to take forward, because it is a topic that is going to bring the industry forward. And so we approached the policymakers by saying, look, we have a great message for the market. We have a great message for the market in Lux and outside of Lux. Put fundraising center stage. Yes, we continue with risk management, we can, of course, portfolio management, but we also need to take into account the realities of our industry, that some of these functions are local and not central, and that private equity houses work across multiple markets. But let's focus on this investor relations function, because it touches upon everything we do over here. You can take a compliance angle at it at first, but over time it will develop. And we haven't even fully touched upon the digitalization of everything that will happen. And so we said to the industry makers, look, we think that there's a fantastic opportunity for everyone to spread this message, but please, we think that the house can be put into a better order. There are little things we can do which are absolutely within the scope of what Luxembourg can do for its industry, that we would like to put forward so as to enable the industry to move faster. And I'll give you just 3 little ideas and recommendations. And there's a long list of the good to haves, nice to haves, and some must haves. But 3 levels. Look at the manager, look at the product, look at the infrastructure. So when we look at the manager, we need to make it easy for the distribution function to come into the country, to develop in this country, to develop within the AIFMs that are operating over here, be they group AIFMs or be they third-party AIFMs. And so we still believe that the tied agent solution, which exists already for a number of years on the MiFID side, which exists for usage management companies, should also come for AIFMs. And we, so you know currently that AIFMD2 is in the making in Brussels. Currently, it's the European Parliament that is shaping up its position to enter into the trilogues, which will start sometime at year end. And so this is now a game of, let's say, good proposals being made, not so good proposals being made, some of them being withdrawn. We don't know yet whether this tied agent solution will make it at European level, but we believe we can introduce it at Luxembourg level. And then there are a number of other little tweaks within the organization in the interaction with our regulator that can be approved so as to make it very clear that we want these functions here to operate as good as possible. Second, on the product level. Now, the product is kind of gold standard in the industry. Everybody is looking towards Luxembourg, and it started with the product, the legal toolbox which we have, be it our limited partnerships, our RAVs, our SIFs, our CCARs. They are being used all over. But we are no longer the gold standard when you start looking at it precisely. And I give you one very simple example. It touches a little bit upon the democratization of private equity, but when today there are 3 categories of investors in Europe. 2 are recognized, actually 1 is recognized. It's the professional investor. So we know that when we talk about alternatives, when we talk about private equity, it's about professional investors. And every investor who's not professional is retail, and retail is off the table or a difficult topic. Now, over the years, and Luxembourg was one of the very first, there was a kind of semi-professional investor concept that was introduced. Remember, in Luxembourg, we have the well-informed status that has a 125,000 euro threshold for an investor to be considered well-informed, subject to giving certain confirmations. Now, 125 is no longer the gold standard in the industry. I saw a couple of weeks ago, I had a very quick and simple request. We want to go into that particular market. Our product must be marketable to 100K types of investors. Unless you can deliver, we go to Ireland. Off they went, because it's 125. There's nothing you can do about it. You cannot go below, certifications off the table. So with your RAFE, that wasn't possible. And so the product went away. You need to know that France, the Netherlands, Denmark, Italy, all have set the bench, the standard, the threshold at 100,000 euros. And that is the industry gold standard. Okay, that's at member state level, but actually right now, at the same time, at the European level, so in these preparations for the final AIFMD2 text, the European Parliament has introduced an amendment of the professional investor definition, introducing a threshold of 100,000 euros. And that is very likely to go through. So if it goes through at European level, it will come in 2 years, 2025 at best. Do we have to wait 2025 for this to come here? No, we can do it, in 3 months, 6 months. Depends how quickly, our parliament is ready to move on a topic like that. It's low-hanging fruit, but it's extremely important, because when we talk about fundraising and when we talk about the Luxembourg product, well, it would make sense that the Luxembourg product is then also this gold standard. No gold plating, the gold standard. And therefore, we must constantly watch where the market is going, also from a legal and regulatory point of view, to adjust where needed. The last element that I'd like to mention before opening up the panel is, let's say, our infrastructure. Let's say the use of our TAs or our custodians and how much they can rely on distributed ledger technologies. You will know that there's a lot of talk about fintech and regtech and DLTs out there, and you know by now that the Lux regulator has gone the extra mile in recognizing and allowing regulated TAs and regulated custodians to use distributed ledger technologies, and a few changes were made in certain legal frameworks. But there is still a little bit of legal uncertainty in the system because, yes, you can use it from a regulatory point of view, but when we talk about shares and units, etc., the law that is kind of the basis, the foundation for how shares, nominative shares, can be registered, that's the 1915 law. Well, the 1915 law does know nothing about DLTs. And so there is a little need to if we want the system to be perfect, for the house to be in good order, then we also need to make that extra step and make a little tweak like this one, which is really not disputed by anyone, but which is needed to offer the legal certainty that is important. So you will see that I'm not talking about, let's say, a revolution. This is just an evolution. It started a number of years ago. It actually started with the first AIFMs being set up, or the first GPs coming to Luxembourg, and we have seen a gradual evolution. But when you look at everything that was achieved over the last few years in terms of growing the substance of this industry and making this industry one of the most important industries within the EU and at an international scale, we now need to make sure that we go the extra mile. We give as much legal certainty on some very important topics that will help us boost these functions. And so for you to go back home to your offices, etc., and tell your colleagues, look, fundraising in Luxembourg, the two go perfectly well together. It's all about investor relations. It's about the investor experience. Remember, when you have a happy customer, a happy investor, everything goes fine. So it's the perfect start for a very nice journey. And when we look at the growth projections and everything that will follow for this industry, let us here take care of this infrastructure, of the system, of this fundraising part, and then the industry, the other fund, the other part of the front office basically take care of that side of the business. So this is setting the scene, and I would like to invite now my panel up here for us to let's have a real discussion about not just my view of where we come from and where we go, but where we actually are on the ground in Luxembourg. Many thanks.